a little dance music about to lay down the gauntlet. Here comes the ominous shadow of the tail of the field, races away, and she wins the win of the Empire reigns supreme.
Backdrop to Grant and Alana Williams and Bob and Sandra Peters in their domination of the Winterbottom Stakes, the free Group 1 races that we have touched on. In the background too was the talk and the rumour of a potential breakup of that combination, which has been probably WA Racing's most successful combination. But Scott, was probably racing's worst kept secret at the time. It was something that was talked about and spoken about and eventually transpired. And the breakup between Grant and Alana Williams and Bob and Sandra Peters. The ramifications and the impact on WA Racing from your perspective?
It was always going to be huge because we reel off all of those previous winners of all those Group 1 races, the clean sweep last year, including the WA Guineas, and they all had one commonality, and that was G&A Williams, W Pike, and Peters Investments. And now, not only is there a breakup of Grant and Alana with Peters Investments, we also lose Willie Pike to the Eastern States. It's all a big changing landscape.
Yeah, it certainly was, and it had been something, Taylor, that had been discussed. There was talk about it, and then we saw an interview where Grant was quoted, and then there was a reaction from Bob, and it just festered, and it festered and festered and festered. And to be fair, I think both parties were probably at the wits' end with each other.
It was even at the start of the Masters and the Ascot Carnival, you couldn't go to the track without everyone talking about, oh, Bob's leaving Grant and Alana, the horses are moving on, etc., etc. It's just monumental, as Scott said. I think the 2020 and 21 season, that capped back-to-back $8 million prize money winning seasons for the team. I know they're not all Bob's horses, clearly, but it obviously goes a long way. They won a lot of Group 1s together, and just the period of change now in WA racing, it's intriguing.
It probably didn't surprise us here on the West Coast on a national scale, because do you think it caused a ripple?
It got some attention because I think, as we all acknowledge, that when you've got W Pike and you've got the Cerise and White, and obviously Grant and Alana, who've had success over there on the East Coast with Bob and Sandra's horses, basically a lot of people over there sort of are very familiar with William Pike and the operation over here. So yeah, it caused more than a ripple over there. And again, with that sort of bubbling, there was also the situation regarding William Pike and whether he would be vaccinated or not, and there was always that inkling that wasn't going to occur, Scott.
Well, of course it has national attention because it's not that long ago Regal Power and Superstorm, Quinella and All-Star Mile, Grant and Alana Williams are training these horses in a different state, and Grant's almost gone over to set up a satellite stable, so it's a massive change. And William Pike then became the big talking point soon after. And when it became clear that something was going to happen, and something did drastically happen on Perth Cup Day, and all of a sudden he wasn't there.
Exactly right. Do you think he would like his time again? And I'll ask you this, Jules, because you were dealing with him very, very closely for a long period of time. The interview, he did that interview and where he talked about anti-vaccination and the like. Would he like his time again?
I think he was just under an enormous amount of pressure at the time, Diggers, because if we can, retrace our steps during those vaccination times, he was under immense pressure. Does he come out? Does he announce his position? People wanted to know. He was being pulled from everywhere, from the Sunday, from everywhere. Everyone wanted a piece of him, and he had his professional commitments to worry about. He also had his personal commitments that he had to contend with as well. I think he was just under an enormous amount of stress, an enormous amount of pressure, and a lot of people chipping in his ear, giving him advice. And he had to work out that advice and listen to the people that he trusted most. I think it was an unfortunate interview because I don't think it reflected well on William, because regardless of his vaccination stance, he's a wonderful person. I think he's a wonderful ambassador for racing. So I think it impacted somewhat in that regard. Whether you agree or disagree with his decision, as it turns out, that if he waited 3 or 4 months and may not have had to go over east, he could have remained in WA. I just think the pressure he was under was understated. He was under an enormous amount of pressure.
Yeah, he certainly was, and WA's lost his New South Wales game. Hopefully we can see him back later in the year in the Pinnacles.
Well, I think the thing that Jules touched on there, Pike understood he was an ambassador for WA racing. By the time that he left, he was very good with the media, gave up a lot of time. He knew how much was on his shoulders. I think it was Inspirational Girl, just out here winning a railway stakes, and he returned to the mountain yard to the crowd chanting his name. That's how big of a name in WA sport he was.
You touched on a really good point, Taylor, that he accepted the fact that he was a media spokesperson, he was an ambassador for WA racing, but William Pike was William Pike, and essentially couldn't understand what all the fuss was about, why people wanted to know whether he was getting vaccinated or not. As he grew into that role, he still felt uncomfortable in that role as well. But I still go back to that. At that time, it's easy to understand now. Most of us are vaccinated, and COVID sort of has gone forward a little bit. At that time, 6 months ago, he was under an enormous amount of pressure. Well, William Pike was obviously a disappointing and a low light in leaving WA race, but as Digger's touched on, he has gone on to bigger and better things, and hopefully we'll see him back come the Pinnacles time. Guys, your highlight of the 2021-22 season. Is there one particular race or moment that sticks out in your mind? I'll go to you, TC. Go to you first.
I'll throw out the retirement of Rock Magic. He's been around, he's racing 37 Winterbottoms, 480 Roma Cups, and then he got a race named after him.
Has he retired, is he?
Well, the last I've heard, he's in the paddock enjoying life. 12-year-old, he raced brilliantly. And then for the Gangemis to win the race named after Rock Magic at Belmont there on Roma Cup Day was outstanding.
Tickets?
Oh, I like the fact that the TABtouch Masters served a wonderful period for WA racing, but at the end it had run its race. So this rebranded Pinnacles and what we are looking forward to later in the year, Jules, there is so much to look forward to. I cannot wait for it, actually.
Scotty?
I love the emergence of Lucky Rumley. Lacto Rumley arrived here having not taken a race ride, 4 kilo claimer, rides his first winner, I think it was for Ray Malpass at Esperance or something along those lines, and now he's outridden his claim, which in this day and age is a bit of a rarity sometimes, and he's riding winners without a claim now and has been doing so in the country for a long, long while. I think it's been remarkable how he's come from absolutely nowhere to be one of both the most popular and the most trusted jockeys.
So COVID forced William Pike out, and COVID kept Lucky in WA.
And Keshaw.
Exactly right. So, we lose Pike, but we get 2 young Mauritians who have done a wonderful job.
My highlights would be changing the guard somewhat in the training ranks. In Luke Fernie, some of the young guns coming through, particularly Luke Fernie and Michael Granford. Luke enjoyed a pretty good season, particularly with his babies, and he lost one of those in Shizabelda and left the building. So he's lost a couple, but I think changing the guard, and also some of the others, not so much the lesser profile trainers, in Jason Miller in Prince Turbo winning a Strickland, bowing out on a high note, and Kylie Craig starting to fry, winning the Hannons and Cowboy. Well, gentlemen, the 2021-22 season we've touched on, we've reviewed. Now we can very much look forward to the new season ahead and a revamped Ascot Carnival, a revamped Masters Carnival, now to be retitled and rebranded as the Pinnacles. Because that's been 2 or 3 weeks since the announcement, and since then there seems to be great optimism about WA racing, particularly on our side of the Nullarbor. But I think it's attracting attention to over east. But there's renewed interest and invigoration of our carnival.
Absolutely, and justifiably so. I would have thought, Jules, given we've gone from 3 $1 million races in successive Saturdays now, Scott, to 4 $1.5 million races. Yes, we have 3 Group 1s still, but hopefully the Gold Rush, the new race, could sort of develop and progress to that stage as well, because you are going to see some high-class horses in that race.
Not to mention the 3-year-olds kicking us off on the first day of the Pinnacles through the Champion Fillies Day, which is Ladies Day as well, and you also got now a $500,000 Placid Arc same day, so it's definitely getting exciting.
And that Placid Arc is a race that really tickles your fancy too, Taylor.
Absolutely, Jules. Well, let me just read these races out. How's this for day 1 of the Pinnacles? Champion Fillies, Colonel Reeves, RJ Peters. Now the Lucky Grey Stakes, what was the Ascot Gold Cup, and the Placid Arc Stakes. That's arguably rivaling Railway Stakes Day. As a purist fan of racing, I think that might even take the cake.
And that's a launch, isn't it?
That's a great introduction, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. And hopefully, we don't know yet, Scott, because there's still a fair bit to be worked through, but you'd like to think there's going to be some interstate footprints here at Ascot throughout the Pinnacles.
Well, this is probably for me the most beautiful part of the new series, because you add a weight for age 1400 at the end of it, but you also boost the prize money of the Placid Arc. There is no reason now that interstate stables can't bring multiple horses for multiple races, and what I'd love to see is some of them, because it used to happen years ago, start bringing some 3-year-olds as well, because you can bring a sprinting 3-year-old for a Placid Arc. You could possibly have a throw at the stumps in a Champion Fillies and back up into a WA Guineas. All of a sudden, you can actually justify bringing different types of horses for the races.
Absolutely, and TC, you follow interstate racing pretty closely. We do have the Stradbroke Handicap, which is worth $1.5 million over 1,400. You've got the Orr, you've got the Memsey, you've got the All Age Stakes up there in Sydney. But by and large, the 1,400 metre distance range seems to be often glossed over, and I'm not sure why, and that's why this $1.5 million Gold Rush ticks so many boxes and creates so many avenues for trainers and connections.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly in WA, it's sort of been looked over for our major races anyway, the 1400 metres, and now you get to a railway stakes. Do you push on to a northerly? The Group 1 northerly now has its name, or do we come back to the 1400 metres of the Gold Rush? Which way your horse goes, and I'm with Scott. I can't wait. I hope we get some good 3-year-olds coming here to WA.
What about the bumping up of the prize money too? So those three Group 1s now worth $1.5 million.
Yeah, it needed to go that way, I think, Scott, because the $1 million races, when they were launched as part of the TABtouch Masters, we go, yep, outstanding, how good is this? But unfortunately, you get these pop-up races over there in the East Coast, like the Hunter and the Gong, which were sort of filtering into our space. You had to do something, and I reckon both Perth Racing and Wagering Western Australia officials have done exactly the right thing.
And now we need to focus on maintaining that and then working on what comes next. And that's something that I'm quite passionate on, because one of the biggest buzzwords at the moment is going to be relevance. Because now that we are up to 1.5 million, we're relevant again to the rest of the country. But as Digby says, there's pop-up races and novelty races here, there and everywhere with big purses behind them. It's only a short period of time that's going to be sufficient, and then up we go again.
Taylor and Diggers, on your program, the Sports Daily on TABradio, the general feel and feedback from Eastern States trainers has been pretty positive.
Yeah.
You've already heard that Lindsay Smith is potentially coming with Tuvalu and in the boat for the winter bottle, Tuvalu for the railway and potentially the Kingston, Chris Kelthorpe as well. So there's been some interest already, some interest from Eastern States trainers in discussions that you've had on your program?
Absolutely, and Godolphin have always been great supporters of this carnival here. You'd be surprised, and if they're not here. And Kieran Maher, David Eustace operations, massive. Chris Waller, like there are some very big operations over there on the East Coast. If you can get them here, the eyeballs from the East Coast with their own horses and their own trainers, it's going to be profound.
You mentioned the trainers there, Diggs. Even the jockeys, if we can get a Damien Lane riding on Railway Stakes Day, if we can get Damien Lane v Chris Parn and v Damien Oliver coming over for one of the days as well. Star power all round.
Mentioned William Pike coming back home. The prodigal son returns.
Could well do. Damien Oliver, he's been here. We saw what he was able to do with Voodoo Lane. Damien Lane, Mark Zara, Tommy Berry's got links to West Australian racing. We'd love to see Bowman. Well, why stop there? Let's look internationally as well. Is there a jockey or two somewhere in Singapore? Is there a jockey in Hong Kong that you could maybe lure here as well? The opportunities are endless, I think, Scott.
Was it a Tim Clark that rode Elite Street almost on debut here over the carnival? It was an interstate jockey for sure. I'd love to get anyone across. It's a numbers game. It's a popularity sport, and it's what we need.
And we off-air, Diggers, we were looking at that international jockeys race that Ascot had about a decade or so ago.
That's right. Joe Moreira won on Naku Pender, I think it was, and you had Olivia Deleuze, you had Gerald Mossé, you had Darren Gauci, Robbie Fradd when he was riding up in Singapore, you had Nick Hall came over. There was so many big names, and maybe that's something that can be revisited. But I would think if you love your WA racing, you are going to be very, very excited by the Pinnacles, Scott.
And programming perspective, the opportunities are now there. You bring a horse for a railway, you go 3 weeks into a Northerly, or you can go into a Gold Rush, or you can go a fortnight into a Northerly. You can bring a horse for a Champion Fillies on Placid Stakes Day and go 7 days into a Guineas, and then a fortnight into a Northerly at Wait for Age. There's so many variations now of where you can go, up in distance, down in distance. Multiple cracks at the cherry is what is attractive.
How many horses do you think Taylor will run in a Winterbottom and then progress to the Gold Rush, the 12 to the 14?
Well, I was about to ask the question. When we open up Chris on that Monday and see the nominations for the Gold Rush, are we going to be in excess of 35 nominations? It's going to be very interesting to see how that field comes together.
Who do you think might come across from the East, Taylor? What's your wish list?
Wish list, I think number one, Damien Lane would be on top of my wish list from the jockey's point of view. Following he's gathered with his success in Japan now, I think that's going to be really important. And if we get, maybe 5 sets of eyeballs from Japan on WA racing, that's always a good thing. I'll throw one horse out, Behemoth. 1,400 metres of a Gold Rush, Wait for Age, suits him perfectly.
Diggers?
Oh, look, I'd love to see Waller. Just Waller, because if you get Waller, there's every chance you get J-Mac. And James McDonald is a big deal. We saw what they were able to do at Royal Ascot with Nature Strip. Why not shoot for the stars? Aim. Ask the question. Would Nature Strip come here after an Everest? Probably not. But you ask the question, how many elite horses does Chris Waller have in his operation? Heaps. See if you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, who knows?
I'm a J-Mac man. I'd love to see him here. He's got such a wide national following and a love association from punters. But I'd love to see Willie Pike back too.
Yeah.
The Wizard is something else because times change, people change. Horses used to bring people to the races.
I just think it wouldn't be the same if William Pike wasn't part of our carnival. And with the rebranding of the Pinnacles, let's hope our prodigal son returns home, William Pike.
You'd think he would, because he's going to be afforded every opportunity should he get here. TC, he'll get a full book of rides. He'll be riding, you would think, some of Bob and Sandra's. He'll be riding for some of the other leading yards that he's had a great association with for such a long time.
Absolutely. Well, I'll put you right on the spot there, Diggers. We expect William Pike to be riding your Railway Stakes Day. Who's your number one seed currently?
For the Railway Stakes, look, I think it's a filly who he knows particularly well, Treasured Star. I think she went up as the all-in market favourite with TABtouch, and for the local horses, that's the way I go. You just don't know who's coming from the East Coast. Hopefully there are a plethora of Eastern States gallopers, but I think she's the one for mine, Scott, just because what she was able to do against the boys in the WA Guineas needs to be respected.
I'll go same ownership group, same style of horse, but same age in fact, but I'll go Devoted, because if William Pike comes back and rides a Treasured Star, then it's probably up to Clint Johnston-Porter to ride Devoted. I think he went to a new level, admittedly only over the winter at Belmont Park, but I think he's got the scope to go right to the top.
You, TC?
I'll go with another horse swooning form, Tricks of the Trade. I think trained for the 1600 metres. I think he got out to the Derby just on pure class and ability. I think back to the 1600 metres, I think that's him. He has a turn of foot to play a really big part in any race he's in.
Jules, any love for Searching Rocks?
Not for me, Scotty. Yeah, not for me. I'm probably at this stage with Diggers, Cerise and White, Treasured Star.
If we go to the Northland, which is the old Kingston town, and then you get that progression from these horses from the 1600 to the 1800, these 3-year-olds who race particularly well, one of them being Alaskan God, who was outstanding in a derby, is he going to be suited in a Northerly, Scott, in your opinion, or is he likely to get out beyond that?
I would have thought that if he's going to win a race over the Pinnacles, it's most likely to be the Northerly, wait for age 1800, but at the same time, what if we see last year's 2-year-old of the year go right through again in Amelia's Jewel? If she goes on, wins a Champion Fillies or a WA Guineas and gets in 50 kilos, weight for age, Patrick Carberry, it's going to be awfully hard to see her not figuring in that race if she comes back as good as she left.
It'll be interesting to see what distance range Simon Miller aims are up at, TC.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about the Phillies program year on year. It gets pretty gruelling by the time they get to a Northerly, as it's now known. So Alaskan God, I can see him flashing home in a railway, and you think next in a fortnight, I want to be on you. But then turning attention to the Winterbottom, I found it very difficult to go past Elite Street at this stage still.
Clean sweep. I'm going to be Team Elite Street until we see something burst onto the scene, probably following the same profile as Graceful Girl, as Elite Street the year before, going through the rating system at the right time. He's proven weight for age. He's clearly over that issue now after his dominance of the Northern Stakes and then the Roma Cup, but he is the one for me.
He's the best horse in WA, I think, right here, right now. I know we talk about Treasured Star potentially elevating, we talk about Amelia's Jewel being very exciting. He's been there, and he's done that. And provided he has no setbacks along the way, and Dan Morton's got a really good handle on him, I think he goes there again. And he can be one of those horses who does resist the interstate push, I think.
One out there. What about In the Boat? If In the Boat does come across.
It'll suit here, you would think. Lindsay Smith, master trainer, we know that. But I just think what you saw Elite Street do in the Northern Stakes and what you saw him do in the Roman Cup, he's proven at weight for age, he's proven at 1200 metres, and Brad Willa has a wonderful association with him.
Well, touching on that then before we wrap up, what about the emergence? Not the emergence, but the stunning form over the last 12, 18 months of Dan Morton and his team.
Yeah, and a key plank of that, you're right, is he's been outstanding. A key plank of that has been his association with Chris Parham, and you work very closely with Chris, and Chris is now a dual Perth Metropolitan Jockeys champion, premier rider in this state in the absence of William Pike, and They're a lethal combination, Scott.
Absolutely they are, because one of the Pinnacles races we haven't touched upon that's also for mine, maybe a Danny Morton type of race, is the Gold Rush at the end. Is Kiss on All Four Cheeks not a perfect weight for age 1400 metre mare? Because she could go to a railway and then go into a Gold Rush. She doesn't have to go to the 1800 of a Northerly like she did last year. They tested the waters. She tried her guts out as she always does, but she's been certainly a mare that we haven't talked about a lot in our review that probably deserves some mention in a preview.
You're tough ass though, campaigning in Melbourne and coming back to Perth.
It would be, but what about if an elite street got a slot in the Everest? All of a sudden, he has to go and come back.
Yeah, he does, and I think it's an interesting one because he's clearly going to race best fresh. We've seen that. Dan's got a very good handle on him now, but I'd love to see him get redemption. Graceful Girl, well done to her. She was outstanding, but I just feel for those connections. When I say I feel for them, they've already won a Group 1, but I would have loved to have seen him go there and win another one last year.
Yeah. And his 2 runs in the winter in the Northern States and the Rubber Cup, they were dominant wins. He was clearly elevated and confirmed that he was our best sprinter.
TC, where does Will Chino sit? Because she went around favourite in the Winterbottom. She actually jumped fixed odds favourite, which was remarkable, but she also was that high ratings horse coming out first time weight for age. Where does she fit this year?
Appreciate the softball question, Scott. I think we've worked out that she's much better at Ascot, where she can get around that really tight corner, hit the front. I think she's a couple of lengths behind Elite Street, certainly at weight for age level.
Thanks very much for your assessment, and thanks very much for your time today, TC.
Thanks, Jules.
From the Sports Hour, you've been up nice and early, so it's been a long day for you. Thanks very much to you too, Diggers. Yes.
Thank you, Jules. No, it's great. It's great to talk racing, and there's genuine optimism, and you can understand why, Scott, because I've not only reviewed what was an outstanding 2021-22, but I think there's a lot to look forward to with the Pinnacles in 2022-23.
We're recording in the Directors' Lounge at Ascot, and how good is it just to be back out at Ascot, even if we are a couple of months away?
Yeah, and it'll come rapidly, won't it? Opening of Ascot, October 8.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Again, guys, thanks very much for your company. Hope you enjoyed it at home as well, watching a review and preview of the racing season gone past, and projecting forward to the new season ahead, particularly with the launch of the rebranding of the Pinnacles. Thanks very much for your company, and we'll catch you again soon.